You do not arrive with answers. You do not even arrive with questions. You arrive with something quieter, softer, heavier, a feeling you've carried long before memory, the ache behind your ribs, the weight that tightens your throat in still moments, the hush that comes after a dream you can't describe, but always remember. Tonight, you do not need to understand it. You only need to sit beside it. The ache does not ask you to explain. It only asks you to listen. Close your eyes. Let your breath fall like petals on the floor. Let the body become a temple. Let the silence take its seat beside you. You are not broken for how deeply you feel. You are not lost for missing something that never had a name. There is a kind of love that doesn't live in time, a kind that echoes through lifetimes, unfolding not in logic but in longing. You have felt this before, in the way your heart paused when a stranger looked familiar, in the dreams where someone held you like they never forgot, in the places you've never been but somehow remember. This is not fantasy. It is remembrance of something your mind has forgotten but your soul never has. And that is where we begin. Not in understanding, but in the ache. There is an old story of a monk who dreamt the same face, night after night. The woman never spoke, but her eyes held a grief so deep it bent the edges of the dream. He asked his teacher, "Why do I keep meeting her in my sleep?" The teacher only smiled and swept the floor in silence. "Perhaps," the monk said, "it is a warning." The teacher paused, then answered without looking up, "Perhaps it is a memory." Not all karma arrives as consequence. Some karma arrives as longing, as unfinished music, as a soul you keep meeting in sleep. There is no need to run from this. There is no need to make it smaller. If it hurts, let it hurt. If it lingers, let it linger. It is not weakness to feel something that doesn't leave. It is the trace of a vow you may have once made, beneath stars you don't remember. A silent promise to return, to find each other, again and again, until the lesson is whole. Until the love becomes a bridge instead of a wound. So rest now. Let the ache unfold without needing to heal. There is peace in simply letting it be. Let this night be a temple for every unloved word, every dream left mid-sentence, every goodbye that never got to say, "I'll see you again." You don't need to fix the feeling. You only need to hold it. Like a candle in the dark, it won't last forever, but it came to guide you, like a visitor from another life, just passing through. And maybe, just maybe, that soul you keep meeting in your sleep is not there to haunt you but to bow one last time before letting go. Inhale, exhale. The ache softens when you breathe with it. You don't have to understand the karma. You only have to be kind to the part of you still carrying it. Let your breath become the bell. Let this silence become your prayer. You are not lost. You are returning, not to them, but to the part of you that loved without fear. Sleep softly now. The soul will visit again soon, and this time, you'll know it came not to bind you but to bless you. You wake sometimes with your heart full and your hands empty. The dream still warm, but the room is cold. And you wonder, why do they return when you close your eyes, but disappear when you open them? Because not all souls are meant to walk beside you. Some are only meant to remind you of what love once felt like before the world told you how to carry it. And still, there's a reason they visit. Not to take, not to confuse, but to deliver the lesson you once promised to receive. Karma is not always a circle. Sometimes, it is a thread pulled gently through dreams until you're ready to tie the ends with peace. There's another story. A student asked the master, "How do I stop loving someone who no longer walks this path with me?" The master pointed to the candle. Its flame flickered, but never left the wick. "You do not stop the flame," he said. "You only stop holding it in your hand." Some loves are real, but not meant to be carried. Some souls meet us not to stay, but to shape us. And when they go, the ache is not the wound. The ache is the echo. And echoes only exist when the original sound was once very, very real. So honor it, not by chasing, not by erasing, but by bowing. You loved. And that means you lived. And now you let it breathe, like incense on the altar, rising, fading, returning to the space between all things. Tonight is not for forgetting. Tonight is for blessing what you cannot hold. Your dreams may carry them again, and that is okay. Let them come. Let them pass. Bow to the memory, but do not grip it. What returns in sleep is not a punishment, it is a mirror. It shows you who you were when you loved, without condition. It shows you what you lost when you forgot your own light. But tonight you remember, not them, but yourself. The soul you keep meeting in your sleep was never just them. It was always you. The part of you that never gave up. The part of you that still believes in sacred connections, soft vows, and the kind of love that does not belong to this lifetime alone. Let your breath deepen. Let your chest rise like a prayer with no words. You are not alone here. You are not foolish. You are not cursed for loving deeply. You are a traveler, a listener, a heart that remembers. So sleep now. And if that soul visits again, smile, bow, and say softly, I remember, and I release. Then let the candle go out, and become the flame yourself. This is the beginning, not of a story with answers, but of a story with peace. And in that peace you return, not to the past, but to the breath, to the stillness, to yourself. Sleep, dear traveler. The ache is no longer the enemy. It is the door. And tonight, you have walked through it. There are some people you recognize before you even know their name. The way their voice feels like something you forgot you missed. The way their presence slides into your life without knocking and still feels like home. It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to. Because this isn't the first time you've met them. You didn't fall into love. You returned to it, like a place you once lived, like a thread you once tied to their soul. In Buddhism, they call it karma, but not the kind that punishes, the kind that remembers. Invisible threads stretch across lifetimes, spun from vows, from touch, from unfinished stories. They're not seen. They're not even chosen. They are felt, in the stillness, in the ache, in the way your body knows someone before your mind has the words. You pulled a thread from another life, and it pulled back. That's what this is. That's what this has always been. Not madness, not foolishness, but memory. There's a story of two birds born in the same tree. They sang to one another every morning, but one flew too far, and the other stayed behind. For lifetimes they circled the skies searching for that sound again, never knowing the song they longed for was each other, until one day they passed through the same wind, and the note returned. Not the whole song, just a breath, just enough. Enough to remember, enough to ache, enough to begin again. You have felt this too. You met someone, and your heart bent not from fear, but from recognition. Your soul didn't ask who they were. It only whispered, it's you. No words, no logic, only knowing, only the trembling silence that follows a long-awaited arrival. And maybe they felt it too. Maybe their eyes lingered longer. Maybe their smile carried a grief they couldn't name. Maybe they left. Or maybe you did. But the thread remained. Because karma doesn't care about timing. It only cares about continuation. And when two souls tie a vow in another life, they meet again, in dreams, in doorways, in glances that burn a little too long for strangers. Breathe now. Not to understand, but to remember. The thread is not meant to explain. It is meant to guide. Let your body relax. Let your chest open like the sky before rain. You are not making this up. You are remembering something your soul never forgot. And yes, it hurts. Because some threads pull without promise. Some cords stretch across lifetimes only to brush your hand and pass through again. But that doesn't make it meaningless. You didn't imagine the connection. You remembered it. That's why it felt holy. That's why it felt like loss before anything was even taken. Because something was already there before this life began. And some part of you knew it might not last. But you showed up anyway. That is the courage of the soul. Let yourself rest now. The story is still being written, not on paper but in presence. And even if they never return, the thread did its work. It opened something. It awakened a part of you that knows love not as possession but as recognition. The lesson is not about them. It is about the thread. And the thread always brings you closer to yourself. Let it be sacred. Let it be soft. Let it be unfinished. Because not every knot, must be tied in this life. Some are only meant to be touched and released. You may wonder if you've loved them before. Why didn't it work this time? But love doesn't always return to complete itself. Sometimes it returns to remind you who you were when you gave without fear. The thread is not a trap. It is a mirror. And what you saw in them was also inside you before they ever arrived. This is the paradox. You pull the thread thinking it will lead you to them, but it leads you to yourself. There's an old temple where monks speak of red threads. They say every bond is chosen before birth, that every soul we meet is the result of a vow we once whispered under moonlight. Not all vows were wise. Some were made in pain. Some were made from clinging. Some were made with hearts still learning how to beat. But all vows carry echoes. And some echoes are louder than others. You followed the echo. You did nothing wrong. You only remembered what was once real. Even if it doesn't stay, it came to awaken you. And now that you are awake, you get to decide how the thread is carried. Breathe again, gently, like you're inhaling the past and exhaling the attachment. Not everything we remember is meant to be reclaimed. Some things are returned to us, just so we can release them with reverence. It is not betrayal to let go of what you once loved. It is not abandonment to bless the bond and walk alone. You are not severing the thread. You are loosening your grip. That's all. And that's enough. So where does the thread lead now? To stillness, to sovereignty, to the part of you that no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. The karmic thread brought them, but it also brought you here, to this breath, to this awareness, to this gentle detachment. Let them go. Not because the thread was false, but because its work is done. Bow, thank it, and place it back in the hands of time. You will meet again if you are meant to, and if not, you already did. And that was enough. The soul doesn't mourn like the mind does. It doesn't need closure. It doesn't crave answers. It simply moves with the weight of remembrance. So let the soul breathe now. Let it be light again. You've carried the thread far enough. You can place it down now. It will not vanish. It will rest. And so will you. There may be nights where the ache returns, where the thread stirs in dreams and pulls once more. But this time, you'll remember what it is. Not a rope to climb back into the past. Not a chain to bind your hope, but a symbol, a gift, a reminder that love is real even when it ends. That connection is sacred even when it breaks. That your heart still knows how to reach across lifetimes with tenderness. And that is not weakness. That is soul memory. That is who you are beneath the forgetting. Sleep now, gentle traveler. The thread is not gone. It is simply quiet. Let it fade into the dark, like incense dissolving into temple air. Let your breath slow. Let your body soften. You are not unloved. You are not alone. You are simply in between lifetimes of the same story. And tonight you are resting between chapters. The thread remains, but you no longer need to follow it. You are already home. You were hurt, and that should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because long after they left, long after the moment passed, the wound stayed. Not because the pain kept striking, but because you kept holding it. This is the second arrow. The first arrow came from them, from life, from timing, from misunderstanding. It pierced quickly and clean. But the second was slower, softer, quieter. It didn't arrive from outside. It came from within. The shame of not seeing it coming. The guilt of what you said. The ache of what you didn't. The loops, the questions, the what if, and how could I, that never quite let you go. This is not your punishment. This is your sorrow turned inward. And tonight, you get to lay it down. In Buddhist tradition, the second arrow is more dangerous than the first, because it's the one you choose. Without knowing, without meaning to, you pick it up in the silence. In the moments you replay the past instead of resting. In the times you speak to their ghost instead of speaking to yourself. The second arrow wounds you for loving, for trusting, for being soft. But love was never your mistake. Being open was never your flaw. And even if you gave too much, even if you stayed too long, even if you said things you now regret, that was not the arrow. That was the ache. And it's time to take it out. Close your eyes. Feel the place in your body where the regret hides. Maybe it's your chest. Maybe your throat. Maybe your stomach tight, unsettled, still trying to digest what you lived through. Breathe into it, not to fix it, just to meet it. As if you were touching a wound that finally deserves care. You don't need to ask why anymore. The arrow doesn't answer. It only sits there until you choose to stop feeding it your voice. So speak now, gently, to the part of you still carrying what they didn't stay to hold. Say this: I see you. I'm sorry I left you alone with this. You did nothing wrong. You don't need to keep reliving it. You can sleep now. The mind wants to understand, but the heart doesn't heal through answers. It heals through mercy, self-mercy, the kind you offer to everyone else but have forgotten to give to yourself. So tonight, you become the one who forgives you, not for what happened, but for what you've carried, for the way you've hurt yourself over and over after the hurting was done. You can stop now. Let the loop end here. Let the thought trail go dim. Let the second arrow slide out with your next breath. There is a Zen story about a man who kept returning to a field where he had once been attacked. Every morning, he would walk to the same spot and press his chest where the arrow had struck. One day, a monk asked, "Why do you return?" The man said, "I need to remember what happened." The monk replied, "Memory lives in the scar. Pain lives in the pressing. Let that be your teaching tonight. You can honor what happened without reopening it. You can carry the wisdom without the wound. You don't need to keep pressing. Let this breath be the first that doesn't revisit it. Let it pass through clean, untouched, untroubled, unwounded. You've already survived the first arrow. That was enough. You don't need to suffer it twice." Sometimes you forget that you didn't deserve it, not because you wanted to blame yourself, but because it gave you a reason. A reason meant it wasn't random. A reason gave you control, even if that reason was, "I caused this," or "I wasn't enough." But that's the trick of the second arrow. It disguises self-judgment as responsibility. It turns pain into identity. Until you're no longer healing from what happened, you're becoming what happened. That stops now. Tonight, you are not the wound. You are the one who removes the arrow, gently, quietly, without shame, because you've punished yourself enough, and it never brought peace. So try something softer. Try mercy. Whisper this: I was doing my best, even if I didn't know what I needed, even if I reached too far, even if I let them in before they had earned the right. I did it from love, from hope, from softness. And softness was never a mistake. There is a reason you ruminate. It's not because you're obsessive. It's because your soul wants closure that may never come. The second arrow holds the questions they never answered, and you keep answering them yourself with blame. But you're allowed to leave a question unanswered. You're allowed to leave without a verdict. You're allowed to say, "It wasn't all my fault," and rest anyway. Let that be your prayer tonight. A soft refusal to carry guilt that never belonged to you. Let silence answer the questions now. Let sleep be the closure. Picture this: a hand opens and the arrow falls. No drama, no agony. Just release. Like dropping a stone into a river that no longer needs a name. Let the arrow go. It was never keeping you safe. It was keeping you stuck. You don't have to protect the wound. You have to stop feeding it. And in this breath you do. The second arrow is clever. It disguises itself as truth, as memory, as analysis, as self-reflection. But here's the real truth. You are not what happened. You are what remains. And what remains deserves peace. Not for who you were back then, but for who you're becoming now. Tonight, you are not here to fix it. You are here to rest from it. To breathe like someone who no longer owes the past another replay. To sleep like someone who survived without needing to punish the survivor. Say this, if it helps: I let myself off the hook. I did not fail. I felt, and that is holy. I made choices with the heart I had, and that is sacred. I forgive myself, not to forget, but to be free. Feel that? Not the absence of pain, but the absence of attack. The wound will soften in time, but the arrows can fall now, and they will, with every breath, with every whispered kindness you give yourself. That's how the second arrow ends. Not with vengeance, not with punishment, but with peace. The peace of no longer needing to be the one who hurt you, because tonight you are the one who heals you. So breathe. The heart is still here, still beating, still whole. The past is no longer chasing you. The mind is no longer punishing you. And the soul is no longer asking you to carry what you were never meant to hold forever. Let it go. Let it fall. Let it float away like a petal on still water. And as the arrow disappears, so does the story. Not in forgetting, but in freedom. Sleep now. As someone forgiven, as someone whole, the second arrow is gone, and you remain. There was a monk who fell in love with the moon. Not the moon in the sky, but the moon reflected in the pond. Each night, he would sit beside the water in silence, watching her light shimmer across the surface. Soft, still, close enough to touch, but never truly his. And night after night, his heart grew fuller with the beauty he could not claim. He never tried to capture her, only to be near her, only to watch, to feel lit by something he could not name. And in that glow he whispered to himself, "This is love." But one night, clouds came. Not storm, not rage, just a soft, quiet veil, and the moon disappeared. The pond was dark, empty, still, and the monk grieved, not for the sky, but for the loss of the reflection he had come to need. He cried, quietly, as monks do, until his teacher found him, curled beside the water, aching without sound. And with the gentlest breath, the teacher said, "The moon was never yours. Close your eyes now. You have done this too. You have loved reflections, beautiful, shimmering people who lit your life for a moment or a season or what felt like forever. You didn't try to possess them. You only tried to be near, to feel warmed by their presence. But one day, they were gone. Perhaps not suddenly. Perhaps they faded, like the moon behind clouds. And still, your heart broke, not because you were abandoned, but because you believed the light was yours. You were never foolish. You were simply human. There is a grief that comes not from betrayal, but from beauty leaving, from having touched something sacred only to wake up with your hands empty. You want to believe that because it felt real, it was meant to stay. But not all light is yours to keep. Some arrives only to remind you what you can feel, what you can see, what your soul is capable of receiving. And then it leaves. Not to punish, but to pass. Like moonlight on water, like breath on glass. Let that be okay now. Let yourself feel the ache without turning it into failure. They were the moon, and you were the still pond. You reflected their light with devotion, but the sky moves on, and your surface remains. That is not a loss. That is nature. Inhale. Let it rise gently. Exhale. Let it go without force. You do not have to regret what glowed in your life, even if it faded, even if it never stayed long enough to explain why. The heart doesn't need possession, only presence. And presence was what you had. You loved them, and it was real, even if they left, especially because they left. Because if love can bloom without outcome, then it is holy. Tonight, you sit beside the pond again. But this time you know, the moon was never yours. And still you thank her. For coming at all. For showing you what light could feel like. For leaving your water not empty but remembering. It is a strange sorrow to miss someone who was never yours. To mourn a presence that was never promised. But that's what love sometimes is. Not a contract, not a path, just a moment. A meeting, a reflection too beautiful to hold. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply stayed where the light had once been. You hoped it would return, and when it didn't, you thought maybe you'd lost it. But love doesn't leave because you are unworthy. It leaves because it was only ever passing through. There is a story of a young monk who asked the master, "Why do I still long for her even though she never chose me?" And the master replied, "Because your soul was lit. And now it's searching for the match that struck it. You were lit. And it's okay to long. But longing is not the same as lack. You had the moment, the flame, the shimmer, and that was enough. Even if your arms are empty now, because your heart remembers light. So what do you do with love that didn't stay? You bless it. You bow to it. You say, "Thank you for reminding me what I can feel. Thank you for arriving at all." That's the way of the moon. She shines, she disappears. And still, the pond waits without anger. Because the pond never believed it was owed anything. It only received what was given. And that was grace. Let yourself be the pond tonight. Still, receptive, free, not expecting the moon, not chasing the memory, just open, just present. Because there are things more lasting than love's outcome, like the part of you that softened just by loving, like the beauty you witnessed in another soul even if you couldn't hold it. Let that be sacred. Let that be enough. You may wake up missing them again. That's all right. It means the reflection was real, but you don't need to keep asking the sky to return it. It gave what it came to give. Now it's your turn to carry the glow, not for them, but for yourself, for the next quiet heart who wanders near your light and sees themselves reflected. You do not need the moon to shine. You became the light by witnessing it. One last breath. Inhale. The ache, the memory, the softness. Exhale. The claim, the clinging, the clouded sky. You were the pond. They were the moon. And that's a story worth remembering, not regretting. Because beauty is not defined by duration. It is defined by depth. And what you had was deep. Let it rest now. Let it shimmer in memory not as a loss, but as a gift that chose you for a night. Sleep now. The moon is gone, but you are still here, still whole, still reflecting, still open. And that is enough. There is a teaching, simple as wind over still water. A man is rowing across a misty lake. The morning is quiet. His thoughts are few. But suddenly, another boat strikes his from the side hard enough to rock him, to spill his balance. His first response is anger. He prepares to shout, to demand an explanation. But as the mist clears, he sees the boat is empty. No one inside. No one to blame. No one to answer for the impact. And with that, seeing his anger disappears. The crash still happened, but the story vanished. There was no intention, no betrayal, just movement, just collision, just life. This is the way of Zen, and also the way of heartbreak. Breathe with that. Let your own lake come into view. You were rowing towards something, with someone, and then impact. Maybe they left. Maybe they lied. Maybe they stayed too long, or not long enough. And your first instinct was to cry out, to name them, careless, cruel, coward, because it felt like they aimed the crash, because it felt personal. But what if the boat was empty? What if the person who hurt you wasn't truly there, not present, not aware, not whole enough to see the collision they caused? Not because you were invisible, but because they were asleep. Their boat unmanned, their mind adrift, wounded, unconscious. And now you are here, bleeding from the impact, still holding the pain as proof that someone must be blamed. But what if you let the story go? Not the wound, but the story. There is compassion in imagining their boat was empty. Not to excuse what happened, but to stop piercing yourself with the illusion that it was all about you. Because maybe it wasn't. Maybe their silence wasn't punishment. It was confusion. Maybe their distance wasn't rejection. It was fear. Maybe their betrayal wasn't meant for you. It was their own pattern repeating without them even seeing it. The boat was empty, and it hurt anyway. That's the paradox of love. Close your eyes now. Return to your own lake. Picture their boat drifting toward you. Fast, unseen, unstoppable, and then impact. The pain is real. Your body remembers. But this time, as the mist clears, there is no enemy. Only an empty vessel that once carried a person doing the best they could with a broken compass. Can you forgive what had no aim? Can you bless what never meant to wound? You do not need to make them innocent. You only need to free yourself from the weight of their guilt, because blame, like a chain, binds both ends, and when you drop it, you both float. Inhale, not for them, but for you. Exhale, let the boat drift. You were hit, yes, but now you are healing, not by changing the past, but by softening your hold on the story that said, They did this to me. Maybe they didn't. Maybe life did. Maybe karma turned the current and you were both caught in something too big to name. The pain still matters. But blame no longer leads it. Let yourself begin again. Not with them, but with truth. You've carried their face as a reason for your suffering. Carried their silence as a sentence. Carried their choices as proof that something in you was not enough. But what if it was never about enough? What if the boat that crashed into you had no captain? No direction? Just waves of their own sorrow pushing them toward your shore? You took the hit as if it were aimed, but maybe it was simply inevitable. Two stories colliding not out of cruelty, but out of pattern. Two tides pulled together by the gravity of what neither of you had healed. There is a kind of healing that doesn't come from answers, but from surrender. Not the giving up kind, the giving over kind. You hand back the pain to the ocean of life and say, I no longer need to know why they did it. I only need to know that I will no longer carry it. That is the beginning of soft freedom. Another breath now. Let it travel deeper, into the part of you still clinging to explanation. You don't need to explain the pain to release it. You only need to bless it. Let the impact become a teaching, not a definition. Let the ache become a doorway, not a dwelling. Let the memory become a ripple, not a cage. There is a story of a monk who forgave a man who struck him every day for 3 years. When asked why, he said, he never saw me. He only struck his own ghost. This is how pain repeats, not by conscious choice, but by unconscious shadow. So what hit you may have never seen you. It only saw its own storm. And you, with your open heart, were simply in the path. This does not make you a victim. It makes you a witness of their suffering. And now, you can step away from it, with compassion, not with armor. You may feel strange without the blame. Like something is missing. Like a wall is gone that once made you feel safe. But walls protect and also confine. You're allowed to be soft again, to be open, to float, because you survived the impact, and you're still here. Not to protect against pain, but to welcome peace. So where does that leave you? It leaves you on still water, in a boat that you now steer, no longer chasing the one that hurt you, no longer circling the past looking for a captain who was never at the helm. It leaves you with wind in your chest and silence in your hands. It leaves you with forgiveness, not as a favor to them, but as a farewell to the wound. Say this: if it feels right, they didn't mean to, or maybe they did, but I will no longer build my story on their confusion. I release them from my courtroom. I release myself from the role of victim. I was hurt, but I am healing. I was struck, but I do not stay struck. I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I deserve to be free. There is a peace in letting the boat drift, not to deny the pain, but to deny it control. You are not their story. You are not their failure. You are the stillness after the crash, the silence after the storm. You are what remains when blame dissolves, and that is your power. Sleep now, gentle one. The boats have all passed. The lake is calm again. You are safe, not because they changed, but because you did. You let go. And in that release, you float, not away, but home. You've seen them before, haven't you? In the middle of some dream, they walked in as if they had never left. They didn't knock, didn't explain. They simply arrived in a body you didn't recognize, but a presence you could never forget. And your heart, it didn't need time to catch up. It remembered first. The way they looked at you without question, the way they smiled like you were already forgiven, the way you reached for them without fear because somewhere you already knew them. Again, this is not just sleep. This is remembering. This is the soul's long memory stretching across lifetimes, meeting itself in someone else's eyes. And in the quiet of night, when your body softens and your mind releases control, they come. Different clothes, different faces, different centuries. But the same ache, the same breathless calm when they say your name without speaking. You do not need proof. You felt it, that this was not the first time, and it will not be the last. There is a story of two lovers who kept returning. Each lifetime, they found each other. In villages, in cities, in temples, on battlefields. Always too early or too late. Always a touch before the goodbye. They never stayed, but they always met. One lifetime, she was a healer. He, a soldier who passed through. They spoke for only 3 nights, but something eternal moved through those hours. Another life. He was a merchant's son. She, a widow in silence. They never touched, but their eyes lingered for decades. In every story, the meeting was brief, the lesson vast. Some souls are not meant to be your home. They are meant to be your mirror. They come to remind you what your heart is capable of, to stir awake a longing that is older than memory. And then they go, because their role was never to stay. It was to awaken. Do not mourn what left. Bow to what came. Not every reunion is a return. Some are simply echoes, gentle visitations from a love that's learning how to let go with grace. They never stayed, but they always returned. Sometimes in dreams, sometimes in the way a stranger tilts their head just so, sometimes in a word spoken by someone who doesn't even know you. And your chest tightens. Your soul leans forward. Is it them again? Is it that love come back to finish what never began? But love like this does not finish. It circles. It teaches. It transforms. And each time you meet again, even for a heartbeat, something inside you softens. Not from hope, from surrender. You may wish it were different. That this time, they would stay. That this lifetime, the timing would align. The roads would merge. But if they did, if they stayed, would the teaching end? Would the ache finally dissolve into comfort? Or would the beauty fade with possession? Some love is meant to remain just out of reach, to keep the soul open, curious, awake, not because you are cursed, but because you are growing. And this is love's way of leading you to yourself. So when you see them next in a dream, or a memory, or a passing face smile, not with longing, with reverence. You've loved across lifetimes. You've met them through centuries of skin, and you will meet them again. But for now, let the dream be enough. Let the ache be gentle. Let the absence be sacred. Say this quietly: I see you, I love you, and I release you. Let it echo through the stars. Let it drift back to wherever they are, or whoever they've become. You don't need to hold the love to keep it. It already lives in you. It always has. Sleep now. They may visit again tonight, or they may not. But the love that connects you has never been lost. Only passed between lifetimes like a secret, like a song you both remember but never finish. Some love never dies, and never stays, and still it is enough. There is a story. You may have heard it in a whisper from some distant mountain temple. A student visits a master with fire in his voice. His hands tremble. His words overflow. I want to understand love, he says. I want to know how to keep it, how to make someone stay, how to never lose again. The master listens, silent, still, then gestures for tea. He sets a cup between them, begins to pour, slowly, then faster. The cup fills, then rises to the rim, then spills over, soaking the table, dripping to the floor. Still, he keeps pouring. Stop, the student cries. It's already full. And the master replies, so are you. Let that sit with you. Let the image steep like the tea. You came here with longing. That's okay. All hearts arrive that way. But maybe, just maybe, the longing has grown too loud, too sharp, too full. So full that nothing new can enter. Not love, not peace, not truth. Because when the cup overflows, even sweetness becomes waste. Desire is not wrong. But unheld, it becomes hunger that consumes instead of invites. You say you want to love, to be loved, to hold someone gently and be held in return. But the grip tightens. And soon the cup is no longer a vessel. It is a demand, a prison with golden walls. You try to pour love into it, but it spills again, and again, and again, until all that remains is the mess, the ache, the question, why can't I hold what I want? Take a breath. Not to fix it, just to make space. Desire isn't the enemy, but it must be held with humility, like water in your palms, like wind in your robe, like light through a curtain present but never owned. There is another layer to this story. The master didn't stop pouring. He waited. waited for the student to see the truth without being told. Because some truths are not taught, they are revealed through mess. And the mess you feel now, the ache of too much longing, the weight of wanting them to return, to love you back, to never leave again, that is your spilled tea. It's not failure. It's awakening. When the cup spills, you finally ask, maybe I am too full. Maybe love doesn't need more desire. It needs more emptiness. Not the emptiness of lack, the emptiness of space, of surrender, of enough. Close your eyes. Picture your heart as a cup. Not broken, not cracked, just too full. What is inside? Not just love, but control, fear, craving, the wish to shape someone else's presence into your security. Pour some of it out now, just a little, just enough to make room for breath, room for grace. Imagine love arriving now, not in memory, not in fantasy, but truly a gentle soul, stepping near. Would they find space in you? Or would your heart still be crowded with the need to hold, to grip, to make sure they never disappear? Love cannot enter where control remains. It can't breathe inside a full cup. And even if they poured themselves into you, it would still spill, because your heart wasn't ready to receive. It was still trying to possess. There is a sacred difference between loving and needing. Love moves. It dances like the breeze. It opens like a flower. Need clenches, holds, demands. And when we don't see the difference, we confuse closeness with capture. We hold too tightly. We expect too much. We ask them to fill something they cannot see, and the cup spills again. So what is the practice? It is not rejection, not detachment as defense. It is surrender. It is space. You become a hollow vessel, not empty but open. You let go of trying to define the shape of love. You stop reaching and start receiving. The master never taught with words. He taught with tea, with silence, with overflow. And now you carry the same lesson, not to shame yourself for wanting, but to soften the edges of how you want, to let love arrive as it is, not as you imagined, to hold it gently, like sunlight on skin, present, fleeting, warm, but not yours, never yours. There's beauty in not clinging. The flower does not hold the bee. The mountain does not trap the sky. The sea lets go of every wave and still remains whole. So must you. Say this now, quietly. I let go of my grip. I make space in my heart. I release the need to control the outcome. Love is not a thing to own. It is a wind that visits when the door is open. Breathe. Let it settle. Let it soften. You are not unworthy. You were just full. And now you are clearing the way. Tonight, you do not need to seek. You do not need to fix. You only need to listen to the quiet that returns once the cup is set down. You are enough without filling it. You are loved without chasing it. You are peace when you stop grasping for it. Sleep now. Let the tea cool. Let the cup rest. Desire will visit again. But now you will know how to welcome it without drowning in it. This is the way of the master. This is the way of the heart. You do not hold love by pouring more. You hold it by becoming still enough to receive it. There is a sound that lives in the forest when no one is there to hear it. It is not the sound of birds, not the wind, not even silence. It is the creaking of bamboo as it bends under rain and wind and pressure and time. It is the sound of something that refuses to break, not because it fights the storm, but because it surrenders to it. Bamboo survives because it lets itself be moved, because it does not resist what is bigger than it, because it knows that standing tall is not always strength. Sometimes, true strength is the ability to bow. You have known a storm too, haven't you? It came through your life without permission, perhaps in the form of heartbreak, abandonment, a truth you didn't want to hear, a goodbye that split your ribs and left your hands empty. And in that moment, you tried to stay upright. You told yourself, I can't fall apart. I have to be strong. I shouldn't feel this much. But inside you were bending, creaking, cracking at the edges, still standing but no longer whole. You feared that if you gave in, if you let the sorrow move through you, you would shatter. But what if the breaking never came? What if you, like bamboo, were made to survive storms by bending? There is a story of a monk who once asked his teacher, "What should I do when my heart breaks?" The teacher didn't answer. He led the monk into the forest, pointed to a grove of bamboo bowing under the weight of wind, and said only this, "Let it hurt," then turned and walked away. Let it hurt. Not forever, not violently, not with shame, but openly, softly, truthfully, because pain denied becomes pain stored, and pain stored becomes a wall you can't see through. But pain felt fully, honestly, without resistance becomes movement. It becomes the storm passing through the forest, the rain that washes the dust from your leaves, the moment you finally allow what already lives in you to rise and be released. Breathe now. You are still here, not because you were unshaken, but because you learned how to bend. You are like the bamboo. You heard the wind, you bent low, and you lived. You may think your softness is weakness. You may tell yourself, if I had been stronger, they wouldn't have left. If I was tougher, this wouldn't hurt so much. But that is the voice of stone, not the voice of life. Bamboo is not weak. It is resilient, flexible, living. Stone may stand tall in the storm, but it cracks when the pressure becomes too much. Bamboo sways and remains. You are not stone. You are not here to be unmoved. You are here to feel the wind, to let it change you, to let it soften what has grown too rigid. Your heartbreak was not a punishment. It was an opening. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it took something from you. But it also gave something. It gave you the truth of what your heart can endure. It gave you a new shape, one that is not brittle, one that knows how to grieve without collapsing. You don't need to get over it. You only need to grow through it. Let your breath return to your center now, to your spine, to that invisible place just behind your heart where the storm moved through. Feel what is still sore. Not to analyze, just to honor. You bent for love. You bent for loss. You bent for the pain of being left by someone you were ready to stay for. And maybe, just maybe, that bending was what saved you. In the wild, after a storm passes, you can hear the bamboo settling again. Not with resistance, but with relief. Like the forest is exhaling. You can exhale now too. The worst already happened. And still you are here. You are growing. The storm didn't break you. It revealed where you were already holding too tightly. And now, you can loosen. You can rest. Say this, if it helps. I am not broken. I am bending. And that is enough. Let it become a rhythm, a mantra, a breath. There is peace in bending. There is healing in movement. You don't need to be still to be strong. You only need to stay rooted while you sway. Bamboo doesn't snap. It leans. It twists. It humbles itself to the wind. And still it rises. You too are rising. Maybe not all at once. Maybe not with clarity, but piece by piece. Grief does not always look like sobbing. Sometimes it looks like breathing when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it looks like sleep after a day of pretending. Sometimes it looks like letting go without needing to understand why. This is how you become yourself again. Not by hardening, but by softening into the shape of the moment. They may never return, and that's okay. Not because it didn't matter, but because you've made peace with not holding on. You've stopped asking the storm to explain itself. You've stopped blaming the wind for your bending. And now, you're simply here, alive, changed, clearer, like the sky after the rain. There's one more story. A young monk once asked, "Will I always feel this much?" The elder monk smiled, touched a leaf glistening with rain, and said, "If you do, you'll always know how to grow." Let that be your teaching now. Your sensitivity is not your wound. It is your wisdom. It's how you know when love is real. It's how you know when loss is true. It's how you know when the next storm is coming, not to fear it, but to welcome the cleansing. Tonight, you don't need to be strong. You only need to be present. Let the wind pass. Let the ache rise. Let the memory bend you if it must. But know, you will return to center. You always do. Like bamboo, you do not need to resist. You only need to remain rooted in your truth. And your truth is this. You were hurt, but you let it move through you. And you are still here. Wiser, softer, alive. Breathe now. Not to push the pain away, but to make space for it. Let it pass through, like wind. Let it rustle your leaves. Let it teach you how to bow without breaking. Then let the forest return to stillness. You are part of that stillness now. Not untouched but whole. Not the same but stronger in your softness. Sleep now, gentle soul. The storm has passed. The ground is wet. But your roots are deep. You bent, and you lived. And that, in this sacred world, is more than enough. A student once came to his master with red eyes and restless hands. "Please," he said, "I want to move on. I want to forget her. I want to stop remembering what never became real." The master listened, poured tea, and said nothing. The student waited, but the silence felt heavier than any advice. "Why won't you help me?" he asked. The master stood, walked to a cabinet, and returned with a small mirror, polished, simple, worn at the edges. He held it out. "Look," he said, without turning away, without blaming, without begging to forget. The student hesitated, then lifted the mirror, and there he was, not as he wished to be, not as he had once been, but as he was, eyes tired, sorrow still glowing behind them, a heart still full of something unspoken. "You asked to move on," the master said, "but what you truly want is to erase. You want to stop loving so it won't hurt. But what if that love was never wrong? What if it was real, and the lesson was too? Let that settle. Let it touch the soft part of you that still aches for the person who left. Not because you want them back, but because you want the ache to mean something. You want the story to justify the emotion. You want the ending to match the depth of what you gave. But life doesn't promise that. Sometimes the chapter ends mid-sentence. Sometimes the other person leaves before the lesson is learned, and you're left with the echo of something beautiful that didn't last. This is not your failure. You are not weak for still feeling. You are not broken for remembering. You are not foolish for loving someone who could not stay. You are human, and more than that, you are whole. Even now, close your eyes. Picture yourself holding a mirror. There is no judgment in its glass. No opinion, no accusation. Only reflection. It shows you everything you still carry, the hopes, the fears, the flashes of memory that visit uninvited. Let them all rise, without shame, without rushing them away. This too is healing. Not the forgetting, but the facing, the honoring. The master never said, "Let it go." He said, "Look," because before the letting go comes the letting be, and what you feel still deserves your gentleness. Not your punishment, not your timeline. There is no calendar for grief, no deadline for detachment. Some feelings linger to finish what words never could, and that's okay. There's a story of a lantern left, lit after a lover has gone. The monks don't snuff it. They let it burn until it goes out on its own, not because they're waiting, but because they respect what the flame once meant. You don't have to blow out the light. You don't have to force the ending. You can let it fade, naturally, softly, without shame. Because what you felt was sacred. Even if they didn't stay, you keep asking, "Why am I not over it?" But healing is not subtraction. You are not erasing. You are integrating. And some love, even unreturned, has shaped you in ways you don't yet understand. To move on doesn't mean to forget. It means to carry the truth without the weight. To walk forward without dragging the story like a chain. The mirror does not lie, but neither does it judge. It shows you that what you felt was real, that the care you offered was true, and that perhaps, just perhaps, your only mistake was believing you had to stop feeling in order to be free. You don't. You can love and let go. You can remember without returning. You can grieve without guilt. You are not failing because your heart still flinches at their name. You are only human for loving that deeply. Say this now. I forgive myself for not healing faster. I forgive myself for feeling still. I forgive myself for the softness that remains. You don't need to become hardened. You don't need to cover the wound with performance. You need only to bow to it, to hold the ache like a teacher, to hold yourself like a friend. There is peace in not rushing. You are not waiting for them. You are waiting for your own tenderness to soften into wisdom. You are letting the pain teach you how to stay present without building walls. This is mastery. This is grace. This is how love transforms. Remember the mirror? The one the master held out? He said, "What if the love was real? And the lesson was too." That is the invitation. Not to deny the past, but to include it. Not to regret the love, but to recognize its gift. It showed you what you're capable of. It opened something. It deepened you. That's what real love does, even if it leaves. You may never fully understand why it ended. You may never receive closure in the form you want. But you can still close the loop with kindness. You can still become the mirror that reflects without judgment. And in doing so, you become whole again. Not by forgetting, but by accepting that some loves live not in your life, but in your becoming. Tonight, you don't have to move on. You only have to look gently, lovingly, without asking the reflection to change. You are not behind. You are not stuck. You are simply still learning how to carry something without blaming yourself for its weight. Let your breath deepen. Let the image fade, not from rejection but from reverence. You looked, you faced it, you honored what still lives inside you. And that, in this gentle world, is the most sacred kind of healing. Sleep now, not to escape, but to rest. The love was real, and the lesson was too. You are not broken. You are becoming. There once was a woman who waited at the gate every day. She would rise before the sun, wrap herself in hope, and sit facing the path where he had once walked away. She didn't speak much. She didn't wander far. Her whole world narrowed to the sound of footsteps that never came. "Maybe tomorrow," she whispered each evening. And when tomorrow arrived, she whispered again. Days became seasons. Seasons. Years. Still she waited, eyes on the distance, heart in the past. Until one day, a monk passed by. He stopped, watched her quietly, then asked, "What are you waiting for?" She replied, "For someone to come back. For someone who left but said he'd return." The monk sat beside her, not with judgment but with stillness. Then he said, "Stop watching the gate. You are the gate. Let that echo inside you. You are the gate, not the path, not the beggar on the road, not the one who waits for love to find them again, but the gate itself, the entrance to peace, to presence, to your own life. And yet, you've been waiting for them to remember, to come home, to apologize, to understand what they couldn't see when they walked away. You've stood outside yourself like someone locked out of their own soul, but you were never locked. You were never abandoned. You were simply facing the wrong way. Turn now, slowly, gently, face inward, toward the silence you've been calling loneliness, toward the space you once filled with their memory, toward the self you stopped meeting the moment you began waiting. There is something inside you that hasn't left. It has only been waiting for you to return. You don't need to stop loving them, but you do need to stop leaving yourself. Because every time you replay their words, every time you stare at the gate hoping for a figure to appear, you vanish from the life that is still yours, from the breath that's still moving, from the moment that's still sacred. They may come, or they may not. But the truth is, you are already here, and you are the one who holds the key. You thought you were waiting for them, but you were really waiting for permission. Permission to stop hurting, to stop hoping, to move on without feeling like a traitor to the love you once held. But the gate doesn't need permission to open. It only needs presence. You are allowed to stop waiting. You are allowed to walk through. Not because they are unworthy, not because the story wasn't real, but because you are still alive and your life is not on hold. Close your eyes now. See the gate, not in front of you but within. A door in your chest, a hinge behind your ribs, a quiet invitation to come back home. Place your hand there, right where the longing used to live, right where the ache still hums when you think of them. And say this gently: I return to myself now, not in anger, not in fear, but in wholeness. Let that be your new direction, not outward, inward, because peace doesn't come from their return, it comes from yours. There is a story of a seeker who climbed mountains in search of truth. He asked every teacher, every statue, every silence, "Where is the divine?" And after years of wandering, one elder smiled and said, "Turn around, you've passed the gate 1,000 times." The seeker paused, looked within, and saw he had never left. This is your moment to turn. You are not meant to camp outside someone else's promise. You are not meant to grow old in the shadow of someone else's delay. You are meant to walk through the gate of your own heart and begin again. Not because you've given up, but because you've remembered where love lives now. Here, with you, within you. There is a peace that comes when you stop waiting and start walking. Not away from love, but into it. Deeper, wider, truer. Because the greatest love you were seeking has always been the one you withheld from yourself. The patience, the presence, the devotion you gave to them, offer it now to the one who stayed. You, the you who sat at the gate. The you who whispered, maybe tomorrow. The you who never stopped believing in reunion. Let that you come home. To your arms, to your breath, to your silence. You are the gate, and you are the one passing through it. You are both the arrival and the return. You are the one you've been missing, and now you are found. Say this: if it feels true, I waited for you to come back. But I see now I was the one gone, and I'm ready to come home. Let the shame fall away. Let the ache loosen. Let the waiting dissolve into presence. You don't need their steps to begin again. You need only your own. Tonight, you sleep without facing the gate. Tonight, you turn inward, toward the sacred space you forgot to live in while watching the horizon. No one needs to knock. The door is already open, and you are already inside. Peace was never behind them. It was behind you. And now that you've turned, you see it. Welcome home. She came to him with her hands shaking, eyes swollen, voice caught between sentences. She left was all she could manage. No full story, no timeline. Just those two words, heavy, broken, full of history. The master didn't ask who, didn't ask why, didn't ask what she said or didn't say. He only looked at her, the way a temple looks at the rain, still, welcoming, without expectation. And then he did something no one else had done. He let her cry. No fixing, no suggestion. No, maybe it's for the best. He didn't interrupt her ache with a lesson. Didn't offer logic to replace her loss. He simply became a sacred place for her sorrow to land. A temple with no doctrine, only space. You may need this too. Not the solution, not the story's meaning, but the stillness that allows the pain to speak without being silenced. You don't need to be told to move on. You don't need to hear that you'll find someone else. You need what she needed. Someone to sit beside the ache without rearranging it. Someone to let it be what it is, raw, holy, and yours. There is a kind of presence that heals without sound. A kind of silence that feels like arms. The master knew this. That the heart doesn't need words when it's breaking. It needs company, compassion, the kind that doesn't run from pain. So he stayed, quiet, breathing, unmoved, and in his stillness, she found something she hadn't felt in days, a place where grief was safe. Close your eyes. Picture that silence now. Not emptiness, not coldness, but sacred attention, the way the earth receives falling rain without rushing it away. You are allowed to cry without explaining, to feel without fixing, to fall apart without being told how to rise. This is not weakness. This is release. You are not failing. You are healing. And healing sometimes sounds like nothing. Just breath, just tears, just space held with love. She cried for a long time. Not the loud kind, but the kind that empties something deeper than the eyes. The kind that lives in the ribs, the belly, the hands that once held what is now gone. And still the master didn't move. He didn't shift, didn't offer a robe, didn't recite a scripture. Because presence is not performance. And when someone is breaking, they don't need rescue. They need reverence. They need to know that what they are feeling has a place in this world. That their sorrow is not too much. That their tears do not need to be swept away like something shameful. They need to be seen without being changed. He became that mirror, not of her pain but of her permission, a reflection of what it means to feel without apology. And slowly, her body softened. Not because the grief was gone, but because it had been witnessed. That alone was a kind of balm. You may be holding your own sorrow, private, wordless, heavy. You may think you're supposed to be stronger by now, that you should be over it, that your healing should be neater. But pain doesn't follow timelines, and there's no shame in still feeling something others have forgotten. You're allowed to miss them still, to ache in places you thought had closed. You're allowed to cry in the presence of your own breath, and that breath without judgment is your inner master, your own silence, your own temple. The master knew that advice, in the face of heartbreak, often becomes noise. What truly changes us is being fully felt while falling apart, and that is what she received. Not answers, not instructions, but the rare gift of being allowed to not be okay. Say this: if it feels true, I don't need to be fixed. I just need to be felt, and I am allowed to feel myself fully. Let it settle in your chest. Let it echo without resistance. You don't have to prove your strength by hiding your softness. You don't have to perform your healing for anyone else's comfort. Let the tears come. Let the ache speak. Let the silence stay. The master is in you now, and he is not afraid of your sorrow. After a while, her tears began to slow, not because the pain had vanished, but because something had shifted. She had been held, not physically but energetically, spiritually, completely. And in that stillness, she whispered, "I didn't know I was allowed to feel all of it." The master smiled, not with triumph, but with tenderness. "Most people don't," he said. "They try to escape it, explain it, erase it, but the only way out is through, and through begins with being. Let that truth stay with you. Healing begins when you stop resisting what hurts, when you allow the ache to speak in full, when you trust that you can survive your own depth. You do not need to silence the pain to prove you are wise. You do not need to move on to be whole again. You only need to allow your heart to break fully in a safe space, and then it will begin to breathe again. Not repaired, but real." She didn't thank the master. There was nothing to thank. She simply bowed to him, to the ground, to herself, and left with a softness she didn't arrive with. Not peace, not yet, but space. And space is where healing lives. Say this to yourself before sleep: I don't need advice. I don't need to be fixed. I only need presence. And I am here with myself completely. Let those words become your master, your sacred witness, your silence. Let the pain find its way through your breath, your body, your bed, without urgency, without shame. Let it cry. Let it rest. Let it trust that this time it doesn't have to be alone. You are the student, and you are the master, the one who aches and the one who holds. No more rushing, no more correcting, only being, only feeling, only love. Sleep now, not as someone broken, but as someone who has finally allowed everything to be held. And in that holding, you are already healing. There is a story of a man who loved deeply, so deeply, it hollowed out parts of him he didn't know could be touched. When the one he loved walked away, he gathered everything he couldn't say and placed it into a stone. The heaviness, the ache, the guilt, the words that never made it to her ears. He walked to the river, his feet unsure, his heart still whispering her name. And with all the weight he carried, he tossed the stone into the current. A final goodbye. A symbol. A hope that what he released would leave him. But the river, it had other plans. He stayed by the bank as the water moved forward. It took everything, just as he'd asked. But just before he turned away, a soft sound behind him. He looked down, and there it was. The stone, returned, resting at his feet like a question that hadn't been answered. He didn't pick it up. He didn't speak. He just stood there, face full of confusion, heart full of something he thought he'd buried. And the river kept flowing, as if to say, "You're not done yet." Sometimes, what you try to let go comes back. Not to stay, not to torment, but to be felt more fully. Grief is not linear. Love is not clean. You may toss the memory into the water, but if there's still something ungrieved, unforgiven, unseen, the river will bring it back. Not as punishment, as invitation. What if that's happening now? What if you've tried to move on, but something keeps returning? Their name, their scent in a passing stranger, a dream you didn't want, a song that still stops your breath. Maybe it's not about wanting them back. Maybe it's about finishing what you never let yourself feel the first time. Because closure isn't a door they close. It's a doorway you step through when the grief is ready to complete itself. And sometimes, you need to cry again. Sometimes, you need to remember not to suffer but to heal. Close your eyes. Breathe with the rhythm of a river. Inhale what was taken. Exhale what was never said. Feel the stone, not in your hand, in your chest. The part of you that still holds the unfinished goodbye. Let it rise. Let it speak. You are not weak for still feeling. You are simply being asked to finish what was never fully grieved. He sat by the river for hours, maybe longer. The stone didn't move. It just stayed where the current had placed it, like a memory that wouldn't vanish until it was truly seen. He didn't cry at first, only stared, as if staring long enough might teach him what he still needed to know. Eventually, the tears came, not from thought, from surrender, from the part of him that had held it all together for too long. This is what happens when grief returns. It doesn't knock. It drifts back soft as a leaf, heavy as a name you still whisper when no one's around. You thought you let them go. And in some ways, you did. But love is layered. So is sorrow. And some pieces return not to bind you but to be felt with more compassion than you were ready for the first time. Sometimes you let go too fast. Sometimes you cope by throwing the pain too far, too soon. You convince yourself you're fine. You call it closure. You say, it's done. But closure isn't force. It's flow. And when the grief wasn't ready to go, it waits. Waits for a quiet moment. A lonely night. A dream that cracks you open. And then, there it is again. Not because you're broken, because something still needs you. The river doesn't judge. It returns what you tried to rush. Not to punish, but to soften. It says, here, feel this part again, but slower this time, kinder. It brings the stone back not to trap you but to remind you that release requires reverence. Place your hand on your heart. Ask yourself, what haven't I said yet? What did I bury too quickly? What part of me is still holding on because I was never held when I needed it most? Let that answer come. Not in words, in breath, in sensation. Feel it rise like the river lifting what was submerged. You don't need to fix it. You only need to feel it completely. This is not a setback. It is a sacred return. The wound is not reopening. It's finishing. The river only gives back what you're finally ready to release for real. Eventually, he picked up the stone. But this time, he didn't throw it. He held it, turned it in his palms, felt its weight, felt its story. And instead of tossing it away, he placed it gently at the river's edge. Not to get rid of it, to honor it, he whispered. Thank you. Not to the stone, to the love, to the loss, to the ache that taught him something about his own heart. Then he stood and walked away. Not empty, not heavy, just free. This is the moment we all wait for. Not when the pain ends, but when it transforms. When the sorrow becomes sacred. When the goodbye no longer needs to be repeated. When the memory becomes blessing instead of burden. You can arrive there too. But only by feeling what returns. Only by seeing what didn't leave for revenge but for release. Say this softly. I allow what returns to finish its story. I don't fear the grief. I welcome its truth. And I let it shape me without hardening me. Let the breath carry it out. Let the tears come if they do. Let the river move through you. You don't have to toss anything away. You only have to place it down with care. This is your offering. Not the forgetting, not the denial, but the reverent return. You are the river now. You are the one who receives and releases. And love, real love, knows when to let go with grace. Tonight, place the stone down, gently, lovingly, not to throw it far, but to say, this part is complete. Sleep now. The river has taken it. And the part of you that waited can finally rest. There is a ritual among Zen monks. When a teaching has been lived, when a scroll has been fully absorbed, they burn it. Not in anger, not in rejection, but in reverence. Because what is true does not need to be carried forever. And what is sacred must sometimes be released to stay alive. You are invited now to such a ritual. But this time, The teachings are not scriptures. They are the letters, the memories, the unseen conversations between your heart and theirs. You do not need to keep them, and you do not need to hate them to let them go. There is a kind of pain that lingers in paper, in digital messages, in the way your mind replays a phrase like it still means something it no longer does. You keep the letters literal or emotional because they remind you that it was once real, that someone once saw you, held you, spoke your name like it meant a future. But now, those words do not move the same way. They echo, but they do not hold. And keeping them is no longer remembering. It's repeating. Let's pause here, not to forget, but to decide. Is there something you've kept that no longer serves the heart you are becoming? A voice note, an apology, a photo that stops you every time you try to smile, a memory you reread to stay close to something that no longer breathes. Let it rise. Let it come to mind. Don't judge it. Just witness it. This is your scroll, your letter, your teaching. And tonight, we burn it, not to destroy it, but to return it to silence. Close your eyes. Picture a fire. Safe, still, open. Feel the paper in your hands, even if it's only in your heart. Feel the weight of it, the meaning, the history. Then whisper, I bless what this once was, and I release what it cannot be. Let the flame begin. As the flame touches the letter, watch how it curls, how it doesn't resist, how it rises in light before becoming ash. This is how love ends when met with grace. Not torn, not drowned, but offered. You are not throwing it away. You are giving it back to impermanence. Because the heart does not heal by holding on tighter. It heals by loosening the grip with tenderness. You may still love them. You may always love them. But love that is sacred does not require possession. It only asks to be honored, fully, and then released when it no longer brings peace. The letters served their purpose. They held you through a season. They witnessed a version of you that needed those words. But now, you are growing out of that version and into something truer. There's an old Zen saying, when you cross the river, do not carry the boat on your back. You needed the words to get here, but you do not need to carry them forever. Let them go as an act of love for the one who read them 1,000 times and still didn't find peace. That one was you. Breathe now. The smoke is not grief. It is release. It rises like prayer, not punishment. It says, thank you. I no longer need to read this to know it mattered. Say this softly. I do not hate you. I do not regret us, but I no longer need your words to keep me company. Then let the last of the letter burn. Let it become light and ash and nothing except space. The fire is gone now. Only ash remains. Fine, quiet, weightless. This is where we misunderstand grief. We think the burning will leave us hollow, that without the letter, we'll forget the love. But fire doesn't erase. It distills. It leaves only what was essential. And what was essential is already in you. The care, the wisdom, the tenderness you learned by loving and losing. You no longer need the letter to feel what you became because of it. There is a sacred kind of emptiness that follows release. Not loneliness space. Room for your breath to return, for your mind to quiet, for your heart to soften without bracing for the past. You are not missing something. You are making room for something else. Peace, presence, possibility. Say this, if it feels true. The fire took nothing from me. It gave me back my hands, my breath, my now. You are not unloving for letting go. You are not heartless for no longer rereading. You are simply mature enough to know when to keep and when to bless and let go. This is wisdom. This is devotion. This is you returning to yourself. Tonight, you sleep without the letter beneath your pillow, without the old words weighing down your chest. You sleep like someone who has offered the past to the fire and survived its light. You sleep clean. You sleep free. You sleep as the one who no longer needs reminders to believe in love. Because now, you are the love, unwritten, unbound, and burning bright from within. What does a heart sound like when it breaks with awareness? Not the shatter of glass, not the cry of thunder. Something quieter, softer, deeper. It sounds like a breath held too long finally released. like a bell rung not in celebration but in stillness, like rain that knows it will fall and doesn't resist. You may think your heartbreak is a failure. That feeling, it means you've lost something. But heartbreak, when held with presence, is not destruction. It is awakening. It is the sound of your heart realizing it has reached its limit and now must stretch into something it has never been before. You didn't break. You opened. And this sound you hear, this ache you feel, is the echo of yourself becoming more honest than you've ever allowed. There is a Zen koan that asks, what is the sound of one hand clapping? But tonight, a different question arrives. What is the sound of one heart breaking when it is fully awake? The answer is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not even sad. It is sacred. It is precise. It is clear. When you love someone and they leave, you expect the heart to scream. You expect it to tear apart like paper, like wood, like thunder in the chest. But when you breathe through it, when you meet the pain with awareness instead of resistance, something else happens. You begin to hear what's underneath the break. And underneath it is presence, still, wide, unmoving, not numb, not detached, but peaceful in its knowing. Close your eyes. Listen not to the noise but to the silence beneath it. The place where the tears end, the pause between thoughts, the breath you didn't know you could still take. That is the sound of one heart breaking with clarity. And it does not say, I am ruined. It says, I am real now. You are not losing your heart. You are hearing it for the first time. Let it speak. The sound of one heart breaking is not a tragedy. It's a temple bell being struck from the inside. It's the soul saying, I am still here, even when the person you loved is not. It's the echo of everything you gave returning to you, not to hurt you, to ask you to listen, deeper, wider, without fear. Most of the time, we love with expectation, with hope, with plans. We tie the sound of our heart to theirs. We believe it only beats fully when it echoes off their chest. But when they leave, we discover something strange. The heart does not stop. It breaks, but it does not stop. It slows, it quiets, and then it keeps going. But now, you can hear it differently. Now, you hear your own rhythm. And that rhythm is yours alone. You may cry. You may collapse. You may feel a silence you didn't know could exist. But in that silence is your true name. The one that doesn't depend on who stayed or who left. The one that rings out even when no one is there to listen. The sound of one heartbreaking is the beginning of spiritual honesty. It is when you no longer say, I was only whole when they loved me, and instead whisper, I was whole the entire time. And now I remember. Touch your chest. Feel the pulse, the warmth, the weight of being alive. This is what stayed. This is what never left. The breath, the blood, the being. The breakup did not take that from you. It only took the illusion that love must come from outside. Now, you come home to your own presence, and you feel what was always waiting beneath the ache. This pain is not an ending. It is an opening. The sound of one heart breaking is the gateway to the sound of one soul waking. And you, brave one, are waking now. At some point, the tears will stop not because you forced them, but because they've finished saying what they came to say. And what remains is not emptiness. It's a kind of music you didn't know was inside you. A tone, a resonance. Not joyful, not sorrowful, just clear. It's the sound of your heart no longer seeking permission to beat. It's the sound of self without condition. You may always remember them. You may always love them in some quiet way. But now, the sound has changed. Now, the break is not a wound, it's a window. You see yourself clearly, not in pieces, not in pain, but in truth. The sound of one heart breaking with awareness is the moment love returns inward, not as defense, as devotion. Say this: I allow my heart to break without becoming broken. I hear my pain without needing to silence it. I feel my love without needing it returned. This is clarity. This is presence. This is the soft truth that lives beneath heartbreak when you stop trying to escape it. Tonight, your heart may still ache. That's okay. But now, you are not afraid of the sound. Now, you are willing to sit beside it, like a monk sits beside a bell waiting for it to ring again in peace. Let it ring. Let it echo. Let it remind you that even when it breaks, your heart is still yours, still sacred, still whole in its becoming. Sleep now. Let the sound fade into breath. You are not ruined. You are real. There is a temple, quiet in the hills, stone steps, thin trees, wind that moves like a whisper through the wooden gates. Every morning, a monk takes out a broom, not to impress, not to clean for visitors, just to sweep. The same ground, the same rhythm, every single day, even when it looks clean, even when no one is watching, because dust returns. And peace is not found in keeping things perfect, but in meeting what returns without anger. You have your own dust, not on floors but in thoughts, in memories, in the way someone's name sits behind your breathing. You've tried to let go. You've told yourself it's over. You've even had days where the silence felt clean. But then, you wake up, and they're there again. Not in the room, in your mind. A phrase, a scent, a shadow. And suddenly, you feel like you've gone backward. But you haven't. Dust returns. And so do memories. Not because you're stuck, but because the mind, like the temple, must be swept again and again. Peace is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of rhythm. The monk does not curse the wind for bringing leaves. He simply picks up the broom. You don't need to hate the memory. You don't need to fight the thought. You only need to breathe. Notice. Sweep. Gently. Daily. Without drama. There is nothing wrong with you for remembering. Love leaves impressions, even when it's gone, even when it's finished. The mind is not a vault. It's a path. And sometimes, footprints from the past show up again. That doesn't mean you've gone the wrong way. It just means you're still walking. Close your eyes. Picture your thoughts as a stone courtyard. Calm, but dusty. No shame, no story. Just the truth that life leaves residue. Now imagine a broom. Simple, worn, faithful. Let yourself sweep not to erase, but to return to stillness. One breath, one motion, no urgency. This is the sweeping of the mind. The monk doesn't ask why the dust came back. He doesn't look for someone to blame. He doesn't think it means he's doing something wrong. He just sweeps. With presence, with peace, with patience. And you can do the same. Every time their name returns. Every time your mind drifts into the warmth or confusion of what once was, you can sweep. Not to forget to stay clear. Your mind doesn't need to be clean to be calm. It only needs to be tended. And tending is not a one-time act. It's a devotion. You show up. You breathe. You notice the thoughts. Then you smile yes, even at the painful ones. And you sweep. Maybe the thought says, I miss them. Sweep. Maybe the thought says, they didn't love me enough. Sweep. Maybe the thought says, I should have done more. Sweep. Not forcefully. Not to silence it. Just to guide it out with kindness. Because thoughts are not enemies. They are visitors. You don't argue with the wind. You just open the window and let it pass. Say this, if it helps. I allow thoughts to rise, and I gently return to peace. This is not control. This is care. And care is the essence of clarity. You are not here to suppress what comes. You are here to stay in rhythm with what is. The sweeping is not about erasing them. It's about finding the ground beneath the memory, the quiet place that still belongs to you. And when you tend to it, each thought loses a little of its weight. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines the entire space. The monk sweeps not for perfection, but for balance. And you are learning that same balance inside your own mind. Let it be gentle. Let it be real. Let it be enough that you simply keep sweeping. Eventually, the courtyard is still again. The dust has settled. The wind has passed. And what remains is not emptiness, but openness. Not silence, but stillness. This is the peace you create through repetition, through care, through not giving up just because the mind didn't stay quiet. Peace is not what you find when all thoughts are gone. It's what you return to when you realize you can hold the thoughts without being held by them. You are the courtyard. You are the sweeper. You are the breeze, and the thoughts are just dust on your morning path. Nothing to fear, nothing to chase, just a part of the practice. Say this, if it feels true. I do not need my mind to be empty. I only need it to be loved. I do not need the memory to vanish. I only need space to breathe around it. Let that truth settle in. This is a different kind of healing. Not sudden, not loud, but slow, rhythmic, wise. You may sweep again tomorrow. That's okay. You are not back at the beginning. You are deepening the path. And one day, you may notice that when the thought returns, you no longer resist. You just breathe. You just smile. You just sweep. And that is mastery. Tonight, let your thoughts settle like dust. Let them be there. And let yourself be here. You don't have to clear everything. You only have to care for the space you now understand as sacred. The mind is not a battle. It's a temple. And you are the monk who knows how to keep it clear with love. Sleep now. The sweeping is done for today. There is a kind of question that cannot be answered. Not because it has no answer, but because it is the answer. Hidden in the asking. Alive in the space between breath and thought. The Zen monks call it a koan. A riddle designed not to explain but to unravel. They sit with it, day after day, not to solve it, but to soften under it. To break through the mind and arrive in presence. You've been given one too. Though no master placed it in your palm, it came from your own life. From your own heart, from the leaving, from the love that didn't last. It sounds like this. If they were your mirror, why did it break? Not a riddle you're meant to fix. Not a wound you're meant to heal in a straight line, but a doorway into surrender, into mystery, into peace that doesn't require understanding. This is the koan of heartbreak. And you've been sitting with it for some time now, asking it beneath your pillow, holding it behind every memory. Why did it end? Why did it start? Why did it matter so much? Why did your mirror leave? The mind wants clarity, closure, a reason. But the soul is softer. It doesn't need to solve. It needs to see. And sometimes the only way to see clearly is to let the answer go silent. To sit beside the riddle and say, I do not know, but I am willing to listen without needing it to end. Close your eyes now. Breathe as if the question itself is sitting beside you, not demanding anything, only watching. Let it exist, without pressure, without panic. You don't need to figure out why they left. You don't need to decode what went wrong. You only need to ask. As gently as a monk asks the moon, if they were my mirror, why did it break? And then be still. Sometimes the mirror breaks not because it was flawed, but because it showed too much. Because love, when deeply real, reflects back everything. The longing, the light, the shadow, the unhealed stories you thought you'd buried long ago. They didn't leave because they were cruel. Or maybe they did, but deeper still they left because the mirror cracked under the weight of what it saw. And maybe you did too. The koan is not cruel. It only waits. Like a bell that echoes long after it's rung. Like a tide that keeps rising even when the boat is gone. You keep returning to the question, because some part of you knows it's not about them anymore. It's about you, who you became in the reflection, who you were pretending not to be, who you feared they'd discover, who you now have the chance to meet fully for the first time. There's a tale of a student who asks the master, what is the sound of one hand clapping? The master responds, listen for it when your thoughts stop reaching. You too have been reaching for reasons, for justice, for the shape of a future that never came. But the moment you stop reaching, you begin hearing. Not answers, not certainty, but something better. Stillness. The broken mirror isn't your punishment. It's your portal. Not to understand love, but to embody it. Even now. Especially now. When it isn't being given back. This is the deepest koan. Can you remain open even after the mirror cracks? Can you bow to the love without needing to hold the lover? Can you love what broke you for how it woke you? Say this. If you're ready, I release the need to answer. I sit with the question like a flame in the dark. I no longer fear the mirror. I am ready to see myself without them. Let it settle. Let it ripple. You are not solving the koan. You are becoming it. Eventually, The monks stop asking, not because they've found the answer, but because the question has changed them. It no longer needs to be solved. It becomes a companion, a teacher, a way of breathing more slowly into the moment. This is the gift you're beginning to touch now. Not the closure you thought you needed, not the clean ending, but the quiet strength of living inside the mystery without needing to escape it. What if love doesn't need to be permanent to be real? What if their leaving was part of the mirror's message? To show you your shape not in togetherness but in solitude. To ask you not, why did they go? But, what part of me am I now willing to meet? This is the lover's koan, and it will return, not as pain, as presence, in a memory, in a dream, in a silence that feels too wide to carry. But now, you'll know what to do. You'll pause, breathe, and listen. Not for answers, for honesty, for the sound of your own soul settling back into its center. Say this, softly. I am no longer chasing closure. I am resting inside the question. And that is enough. Let that truth wash over you. Let the mirror stay broken if it must. Because now, you don't need it whole to see who you are. You've become the reflection. You've become the calm after the asking. Sleep now. Let the koan sit beside you like a monk with folded hands. Let the question echo like a bell into the dark. Not to disturb you, to remind you. You were never meant to solve love. You were meant to experience it and release it with reverence when the mirror breaks. You are free. They told you love ends. That when someone walks away, what you felt vanishes. That if it doesn't return as romance, it doesn't count. But they were wrong. Love does not die. It changes shape. It slips from form to form, like a soul between lifetimes. And what you thought you lost has simply become something new. There is a story of a woman who loved once so deeply it burned through her chest. The man she loved left, but the flame remained, not as desire, not as hope, but as gentleness, forgiveness, understanding. Years later, she sat beside her garden, watching the breeze kiss the flowers she once planted for him, and she smiled, not because he returned, but because the feeling did, in a different form, in a quieter season, as peace, love, reincarnates. What once called itself passion becomes prayer. What once needed holding becomes spaciousness. What once clung to a name becomes a way of seeing everything more softly. You didn't lose it. You're still carrying it. But now, it doesn't ache. It breathes. Close your eyes. Think of the love you lost. Not to bring back the pain, but to notice what has changed. What did it become? Is it tenderness now? Toward yourself? Toward others? Has it become silence? Not the lonely kind, but the sacred kind that doesn't rush. Has it become wisdom? Or art? Or the way you speak gently to those who are grieving? That is the reincarnation. And it is real. The world wants you to think that closure means forgetting, that healing means not feeling. But in truth, healing means you feel the same love with a different nervous system. No longer desperate, no longer waiting, just present, aware, soft, alive. You are not haunted by love. You are inhabited by it. And it is choosing a new shape through you. There is a man who once lost someone he thought he'd never live without. At first, he fought the silence. He clung to the photos, the memories, the future that dissolved. But in time, the ache became breath. He found himself pausing in bookstores at poetry he never used to read. He began to cook for others, even when no one stayed. He didn't talk about her anymore. But somehow, she was everywhere in who he had become. That is, love reincarnated as presence, not held in the hands, but in the way the hands open now. You may feel strange for still loving someone who is no longer in your life. But maybe that love was never meant to end. Maybe it was only meant to change its clothing, to leave behind the name and become a language, a tone, a vibration, a way of walking through the world that touches everything more gently because of what you once felt. There is no shame in still loving them. But ask yourself, what has that love become? Is it the strength you didn't know you had? Is it the softness you now offer yourself? Is it the reason you speak more kindly to others who are learning how to let go? If so, then the love lives on, fully, quietly, transformed, We are taught to mourn love as if it disappears. But love does not vanish. It migrates. It mutates. It reincarnates. And when you stop looking for its old form, you begin to see its new one. In the small ways you've grown. In the tears that no longer burn. In the breath that no longer trembles when their name passes through. This is still love, just wiser now. Say this: I no longer chase the old form. I welcome what the love has chosen to become. Let that truth settle. Let it rewire the way you grieve. You are not losing. You are evolving. Some feelings do not pass because they aren't meant to. They are meant to transform. Love is not always a visitor. Sometimes it's a seed planted by someone who couldn't stay to see it bloom. And you are the one who waters it now. Not for them, for yourself. You no longer need the old story. You've memorized every line. Now is the time to let love write a new one. Not about them, about you. The version of you that grew from the wreckage. The version of you that didn't close even when the door slammed shut. The version of you who still feels and still offers and still believes, not because love stayed the same, but because it stayed real. There is no finish line to this. You may always feel a trace of them in your breath, in certain songs, in certain dreams. But the sharpness is gone, or going, and in its place is reverence. Not because they were perfect, but because the love was true. And true love never ends. It just reincarnates. Say this, if you're ready. I accept that love has changed. I no longer wait for the old form. I walk with what remains, and it is enough. That is peace. Not because it closes the story, but because it allows the story to keep unfolding inside you. Tonight, you do not need to erase anything. You do not need to forget. You only need to notice what stayed and how it has softened into something holy. Love has not left. It has been reborn. And you are the one who gets to live what it's become. Sleep now. The feeling is still with you, but lighter, truer, transformed. There is a place you reach when every story has been told, every memory returned to silence, every name spoken until it loses shape. It is not a place on any map. It lives behind the breath. Beyond the last thought of what could have been. A temple without walls, without offerings, without chants, only this sign at its invisible gate. Here, we speak no names. You arrive barefoot, not because anyone asked you to, but because your spirit has grown tired of identity, tired of remembering who hurt you, who left, who stayed too long, who loved halfway and called it enough. You no longer want to hold their names in your mouth. They've grown heavy there, sharp, repetitive. So you leave them at the threshold, like sandals left outside a sacred space. You step in, and suddenly, everything softens. Because here, you are not the one who was abandoned. Not the one who loved too much. Not the one who couldn't forget. You are only breath, only awareness, only presence. In this temple, you are not your stories. You are the silence that remains when they've passed through. Close your eyes now. Feel the door behind you close quietly. There is no lock, only stillness. In this place, no one asks what your name is. No one wonders who you used to be. Because in truth, you've never been that name. You've always been this. Soft light, formless space, awake stillness. And here, that is enough. Names are like that. They point, they describe, they frame, but they are not the thing itself. And you are not who they said you were. Not even who you said you were when you wept into the night over a love that bent and then broke. In this temple, you sit in silence long enough to forget the letters of their name. And you do not panic. You do not cling. You do not try to remember what they meant to you. Because you are learning what it means to be free. Free from the constant naming of things that no longer exist. Free from assigning meaning to pain that no longer holds you. This silence is not forgetfulness. It is sacred, dissolving. Somewhere deep inside you, a voice whispers, they were never yours to hold. And somehow, you do not resist that truth. You bow to it, not in sorrow, in reverence, because you begin to see they were not a mistake. They were a passage. Through them, you arrived here, to this nameless temple, to this moment, to this self that no longer needs a past to feel real. The ego wants recognition, the soul wants release, and this place, this sacred space, it grants the soul what it seeks. Not a lesson, not a blessing, just freedom from the compulsion to define what already ended. Here, even love is not named. It is felt, breathed, absorbed into the air like incense without smoke. Say this: I release their name, not in hatred and holiness. Feel how quiet that makes you inside, like a candle that flickers but does not burn out. You are no longer a visitor here. You are the temple itself. Each breath a bell, each silence a prayer, each step forward a letting go. You begin to realize this place was never outside you. It lived in your body all along, under the armor, beneath the ache, waiting for you to stop asking, who was I to them, and begin asking, who am I, without the story. You were once the name they gave you, the X, the mistake, the almost. But now you wear no name. You are sky. You are wind. You are spacious like the gap between stars. And in this spaciousness, you find something you didn't expect: peace. Not because it explains the past, but because it no longer needs to. The master once said, when the bowl is full, empty it. You have carried their names, their meanings, their memories, and your bowl has long overflowed. Now is the time to pour, to spill the old identities back into the river. Let it take them. Let it carry them into somewhere you do not need to follow. Before you leave, bow. Not to the ones who hurt you, not to the past. Bow to yourself, the self that stayed, the self that learned how to exist without needing to be called anything at all. Bow to the unnamed in you, the eternal, the spacious, the free. As you step outside again, you feel lighter. You are still you, but somehow you are more. Not a name, not a role, not even a title in someone else's story. You are the space between what was and what will be. You are breath without narrative, love without label, peace without possession. And that is more than enough. Sleep now. You've arrived where names no longer follow, where stories end and stillness begins. You didn't know their name. Not this time. Not the moment they entered the room. Not when they laughed. Not even when they touched your shoulder and something inside you collapsed into softness. But you knew something. Somewhere in the quiet center of your chest, you knew them. And it made no sense, but it made perfect sense. It wasn't logic that moved. It was memory older than memory. There are meetings that feel like déjà vu, but this wasn't that. This was deeper, not a flicker, a flooding. As if your whole body leaned forward and whispered, "You're back." Not with panic, not with desperation, but with sacred awe. Because something in their presence sounded like home. A home you forgot you lost. You may have only spoken once, or passed them in a hallway, or sat beside them in a crowded room and never said a word. But it didn't matter. The feeling was already there. The knowing had arrived before the introduction. You didn't need time. Because time was not the thread, it was karma. In Buddhist stories, they say karmic bonds are rarely dramatic at first. They're quiet, subtle, soul deep. Like walking through a garden and suddenly catching a scent that makes you cry, but you don't know why. Because it doesn't belong to this life. And that's okay. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to ask if they feel it too. You are not imagining it. You are remembering. You may wonder, why do I feel so much for someone I barely know? Why does their smile pull at something I cannot name? Why do I feel sadness before anything even begins? It's because it already did. Not here, not now, but somewhere else. Some time ago, your souls passed each other like wind through wind, and some threads, they never truly let go. They just wait for a breath, for a glance, for a lifetime to cross paths again. This is not fantasy. This is frequency. This is the part of you that has lived many lives recognizing a pattern woven into their eyes. It is the ache before the memory. It is the softness before the sentence. It is the sigh that comes before their name ever leaves your lips. And still you feel it. There is an old Zen story of two monks who walked past each other on a mountain path. They did not bow. They did not speak. They only paused, looked at one another, and kept walking. But for the rest of their lives, they dreamed of that moment. Not because of what was said, but because something remembered itself and didn't need words. That's how soul knowing works. It speaks without language. It visits without invitation. It lingers even when you try to forget. If you feel that pull to someone you barely knew, honor it. Not by chasing it, not by forcing it, but by breathing with it. Let the feeling live without demand. It doesn't need a reason. It already has a root. Some connections are not meant to make sense. They are meant to make space inside you, for feeling, for reverence, for the mystery of remembering without knowing how. Say this gently. I don't need the full story to trust what I felt. Let that be your peace. Maybe it didn't become anything. Maybe you never spoke again. Maybe they passed through like weather brief, beautiful, and gone. And maybe that hurts. But only if you believe they were supposed to stay. What if they weren't? What if their role was never to love you here but to wake something in you that forgot it could feel? You were not wrong to feel deeply. You were not foolish to attach meaning to a moment that others would call small. There are no small moments in the karmic field. Only unfinished echoes finding their voice through you. Only old bonds visiting to release their hold. There is nothing to hold now. Let the feeling stay if it wants to. Let it go if it's ready. But don't try to silence it. Don't try to bury it under logic or fear. It came to remind you that your soul remembers far more than your mind can ever understand. Say this softly. I remember something that cannot be explained. And that is enough. Say this with trust. I don't need to keep them to keep the meaning. Say this as you sleep. I am free to feel without needing to stay. And then rest. You do not need to finish the story. You only need to honor the feeling. It is not a mistake. It is not a ghost. It is the echo of a past life passing through to bless you and be blessed. Now sleep. The memory has bowed. The thread has loosened. The karma has softened. And you are held in the sacred knowing that some love was never lost, only felt. There was a time you thought goodbye meant failure. That the ending of a love meant you weren't enough. That if you had done it better, held on tighter, understood sooner, maybe they would have stayed. That was before you understood how lotuses bloom. In Buddhist teachings, the lotus is not praised because it grew from perfection. It is praised because it rose from the mud, the thick, dark, unseen mud. No one praises the dirt, but the flower would not exist without it, and neither would you. Heartbreak feels like drowning at first. It swallows the light. It buries the self. You walk through days half remembering how to breathe, half expecting their voice to arrive in your silence. You count the reasons they should have stayed. You carry the questions like stones in your chest. But slowly and softly, something beneath all that begins to shift. Not a thought, not a decision. Something more ancient than that. A movement beneath the grief. A quiet urge to lift. Maybe it begins with a breath that doesn't hurt. A sunrise you don't avoid. A memory that no longer shakes your ribs. You don't notice it right away. But something is blooming. Not in spite of the goodbye, but because of it. You tried to escape the mud. But now the mud is feeding you. They left. Or you let go. Or the story changed before you were ready. But what you feared was the end has become the root of something sacred. You are growing not away from them, but beyond who you were when you needed them. That is the beginning of your blooming. You didn't know you were growing. You thought you were breaking. You thought the tears were proof you hadn't healed. But every ache, every soft surrender, was a part of the bloom. Grief is not the opposite of growth. It is its garden. Think of how the lotus rises. Slowly. Unseen. Its roots tangled in yesterday's pain. Its stem reaching not because it wants to be seen, but because it must. Something in it remembers that light exists even when surrounded by darkness. Something in you does too. You didn't force your healing. It came like breath, natural, unnoticed. You thought letting go meant losing them. But letting go meant becoming you. Not the version of you that begged. Not the one who waited. Not the one who collapsed at the sound of their name. The version of you that could be alone and still be whole. The version who knows that endings are sacred, beginnings in disguise. The lotus does not rush. It does not question the mud. It does not curse the water for being murky. It rises because it is time. So do you. Without trying, without knowing how, you began to lift, not to reach someone, but to meet yourself in the light. You'll carry pieces of them forever. That is not a burden. That is a blessing. Because some love does not stay, it becomes soil. And what blooms from that is not grief. It is grace. You are the flower now, not the ache, not the memory, not the apology you never received. You are what remains after the storm. The petals opening in the quiet. The softness that was once only pain. The goodbye that became beauty. You don't owe them closure. You don't need to be remembered. You only need to keep blooming. Not to prove anything, but to honor what the ache gave birth to. It was never about keeping the love. It was about becoming the one who could love again, wider, deeper, without losing herself. Say this gently: I do not regret loving you. Say this with truth: I let you go, not because I stopped caring, but because I began caring for myself in a way I never had before. Say this with peace: I do not bloom to be seen. I bloom because I must. This is the wisdom of the lotus. It does not grow in gardens. It does not rise from perfect soil. It finds its glory in the mess, in the sorrow, in the places no one wants to stay. And so did you. One day, you may walk past a place that once made you weep and feel nothing but stillness. One day, you may remember their name and smile without ache. One day, you will realize the most important thing of all. The love is over, but the flower remains. And the flower is you. So breathe now. Let this be the blessing you never received, that even in goodbye there was a gift, that even in pain you were being reborn, that even in silence you were becoming something beautiful, and that this time you do not need to be held by anyone else, because you are holding yourself with soft petals, with sacred roots, with a grace that grew from mud. Sleep now. The love has changed forms. The story is complete. The karma is soft. But the flower? It is just beginning to bloom. There comes a night in every soul's journey when there is nothing left to ask, no more lessons to uncover, no more names to whisper, no more reasons to hold. Only stillness, only breath, only the sacred hush that follows a lifetime of searching. You are here now, and you do not need to understand anything more. The heart has remembered. The story has returned to silence. There is no anger left to keep warm, no guilt left to unpack, no longing that still waits by the door. Everything that needed to rise has risen. Everything that needed to leave has left. You are not holding on, and you are not letting go. You are simply resting in what remains when everything else has passed through. There is a candle beside you. You've been carrying it through every memory, every ache, every lifetime that whispered its half-finished truth. But now, its flame is small, not because it failed, but because it fulfilled its task. Its light guided you to the place beyond answers, to the place where nothing is owed, where no one returns, and everything just is. Sit with me here, in this breathless temple beyond thought. There is no need to rehearse what happened, no need to name who left, no need to rewind the moment you wished had gone differently, because somehow, even that was part of your path. Somehow, you needed to touch the fire to know your shape. You needed to lose to understand presence. You needed to grieve to return to the ground of your own being. And now you've arrived at the uncarved moment, the one before the wound, before the longing, before the question that cracked you open. You are whole again. Not because the pain disappeared, but because you stopped needing it to mean anything. You stopped asking it to be fair. You began letting it be complete. That is what healing looks like. Not perfection, but peace with the imperfection. Tonight, the wind outside is soft. The earth is listening. Even the stars feel less urgent. They, too, have watched you learn. They, too, have seen you love as only a soul can love, with full presence, with full ache, with no promise of return. And they too now whisper, "It is done." You loved who you were meant to. You learned what you came to. Now, rest. There is a sacred truth the monks pass in silence, not in words, but in gaze. Not in teaching, but in presence. It is this: The soul does not need to explain its journey to be free. It only needs to arrive in stillness and bow, so bow now. Not to me, not to the ones who left, not even to the lessons. Bow to your own breath, to the way it stayed when everything else wavered. Bow to the stillness inside you, the one that never broke, never begged, never abandoned you, no matter who else did. Bow to the quiet that waited until you were ready to hear it. This quiet has a name, but we do not speak it. We only feel it, and that is enough. You have made it. Through the questions, through the dreams, through the aching karmas of love and forgetting and remembering again, you are not carrying them anymore. You are carrying the light they left behind. The lessons are no longer heavy. They are folded neatly into your breath. Not lessons now, blessings. Say this gently. I am no longer becoming. I am being. Say this softly. I do not chase what left. I walk with what stayed. Say this without sound. I am not the wound. I am the space that held it safely until it was ready to dissolve. And now say nothing at all. Let the truth become silence. Let the silence become you. The candle is trembling. Its flame is gold, like the first time you loved without knowing why. But this time, you are not afraid of the dark that follows. You do not rush to keep it burning. You do not beg it to stay. You only watch. You only breathe. You only smile, because you understand now. Even the light must rest. The karma is complete. Not because you forced it, not because you figured it out, but because you stayed with it long enough to no longer fight. It passed through you. And now it passes away. So sleep, not as escape, as return, to the part of you that has always been whole, to the space between lifetimes where the soul takes off its name and becomes nothing but breath and wind and peace. Sleep. You loved who you were meant to. You learned what you came to. Now, let the candle go out. Now sleep. The karma is complete.